A lot of people don't hold much merit in oral history because you know how a story can get changed. Like I could start a story with you and by the time it gets 10 people down, it's changed. Oral history is a little different when you're talking First Nations people and Underground Railroad descendants because it's the way, it's tradition. It's the way it was passed down through storytelling. There's a lot of merit to it. There's a Boozhoo sign over here. It's faded over time. That's my daughter's artwork. The Kejmanong territory. Like the island, you're going to find the Ojibwe, the Potawatomi, all Algonquin-speaking people. Algonquin linguistic, even though the language is varied between tribes. Now, where my dad was born, and these people called themselves Anishinaabe, and where my dad was born, that's Iroquois linguistic people, and they call themselves as a group the Haudenosaunee. Tuscarora were the last to join. They were said to be the most warlike of them all. There's Algonac, Michigan on the other side. There's the ferry. There's a ferry that crosses from here over to Algonac. You turn left and take you straight into Detroit. We're on Wampum Island, First Nation. The Kejmanong, unceded territory. We're at the Veterans Monument and the Tecumseh Monument. There's plaques all along the Thames River, like going from Windsor all the way up Longwoods Road to where he was killed near the Moravian town. And it's been said through oral history that his body was brought out here and buried. And there's a lot of people that have a relation to Tecumseh that live here on this island. First Nations people can join the U.S. military. It's Native North American, not Native Canadian. So their traditional grounds, like here we're on the Canadian side, just on the other side, Algonac, Michigan. And that's still all part of all this, all around the Great Lakes, north and south of it, east and west of it, was it Anishinaabe land. In this part here, Walpole Island, it's unceded territory. It was never surrendered. Let's ride, folks.
Let's have a big round of applause for our grand entry. Beautiful, wonderful, colorful.
What is a powwow? It's I would say it's a social gathering where indigenous people can come and practice their cultural dances, and drumming and singing was forbidden for them to do for a whole lot of years. All powwows are going to open with a grand entry. It's usually leading in is going to be a head veteran, and carrying eagle staffs and stuff, and all the flag bearers first. And then following them will be the different dance categories to come into the circle during grand entry, and eventually you're down to the youngest ones, and they're all going around in the circle then. The indigenous people have great respect for veterans. So what they would do every time a new runaway made it to the village, people would be working in their farms like for miles away. They'd ring this bell. And when they heard that bell ringing like on a day, this time of day, they would know a runaway slave just made it here. And then people would come to greet them. Now, why was this settlement so successful? When you think about that trip across the Atlantic, that's horrific, man. You think those are men, women, and children who were stamped in the image of the living God. They were endowed with rationality. Their souls were immortal. They had minds capable of grasping the great interest in eternity. And their names would have been certainly written in the book of life. And so the people here knew that they had to set an example. They knew they were determined to get an education. They knew that they had to provide their kids with a proper education so that they would increase in knowledge and in virtue and in every ennobling principle of man's nature. Okay? Frederick Douglass visited Chatham, I believe it was in 1854. He was probably the greatest abolitionist orator of all times. He was an escaped enslaved person. He escaped from Maryland, and he visited the Elgin-Buxton settlement, and later that day he gave a speech in Chatham about what he had seen. And part of his speech was, he said, "I was proud of my race today upon visiting the Elgin Association at Buxton. I found men and women who but a short time ago were under the rod of the slave driver, settled down on their own farms, administering to their own comforts and growing in intelligence and in wealth. The efficiency of their common school, where the higher branches of education are taught and eagerly acquired, did my heart good and filled me with hope for the future." History is very complex. A lot of it that has been written is inaccurate and totally one-sided. It has to be explained from its entirety, both sides, all sides, everybody involved.
Come to cheer me, sound me echoes soft and low, till your memories linger near me, chiming bells of long ago.
In certain cultures, oral history was the way of passing down events from the past and traditions, cultural traditions. Oral history, like storytelling, has been that's part of the way of telling history for indigenous people and the fugitive slaves and stuff. The gift of oral history is when you're telling it, the family members or anybody you're sharing. You're passing knowledge down to, let's say, your family members or friends. You're sitting around and you're talking about it. kind of experiencing it right now. Like, would you find this more personable than what I'm saying right now than you sitting there reading a history book? Maybe a little more fun too. Sitting around a campfire, getting told stories, true stories that were passed down through generations. Because like I told you before, the history books in the past have been mostly written by the oppressor or the victor, and nothing mentioned of the history of the people that they supposedly suppressed. Whereas they have a whole different side to that story. So to get the truth, you need all sides. Just getting the stories out there, it makes people more knowledgeable, and like I said, when I can improve, especially a young person's, change a young person's life for the better, that's rewarding. And like I said, I think I told you, that's part of what keeps me going.